I think football works in mysterious ways. I don't think you can ever rule it out.
As soon as the new owners come in, United will improve drastically.
If you win that first trophy, what it does is give everyone the belief that you can go on and win more. And Spurs have not obviously had that feeling for a very, very long time.
We can't clip this up without the context. I think is very, very important.
Hello guys and welcome to the new episode of the Sportsman Untitled. Today we've got two very special guests with us. We've got Statman Dave. Dave, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, very good.
And we've got Ricky from Last Word on Spurs. Ricky, how you getting on?
Could be better based on football, but life as a Spurs fan, right?
Exactly. We've got a whole lot to discuss today. We're going to go through a lot of discussions, a lot of topics, but there's only one place for us to start after that incredible goal yesterday from Alejandro Garnacho. Is it the best overhead kick we've ever seen in the Premier League, Dave?
I think it is definitely up there. It's up there with Wayne Rooney's against Manchester City. Obviously, the gravitas of that goal in a Manchester derby, huge goal where United were kind of pushing City for the title. But the way that Garnacho manoeuvred himself, got on the end of the ball, read the flight of the ball, and the execution is absolutely sensational. In a game where United needed an early goal to quieten the fans, I think it's really, really poignant. And I think we'll look at the end of the season and that will be up there with the goals of the season. Is it the best goal in Premier League history? Probably not. That's Paolo Di Canio versus Wimbledon. You remember that goal? The scissor kick, unbelievable. Marco van Basten-esque, but a brilliant goal.
Ricky, what did you think watching that one?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable goal. I just think the timing of the goal itself really deflated Everton. And I think when you consider, again, you're asking a player to provide a moment of brilliance, the way in which, as David said there, he got off the ground to execute such an unbelievable finish, I think it will be remembered for many, many years to come. And that will go some way to having to be beaten this season in terms of a goal of the season when you consider the type of game, the atmosphere going into it, the execution of the goal. It was just simply world class.
Dave, I'm going to have to ask you to get off the fence here. Is it the best goal Man United have scored in the Premier League?
That's a big one, but you've got David Beckham versus Wimbledon as well. I think that was a special goal at a time where he was emerging, which is quite similar to Garnacho. I think that's the thing that's really interesting for a United fan perspective here. Emergence of talent. It takes a number of different situations to get to a point of a David Beckham, world class player. Alejandro Garnacho has that talent. He has the work, and now it's getting him to that point. Best ever, I'm going to go with no. I think that Beckham goal, the Rooney goal, I'd probably slightly put it ahead, but unbelievable finish. Okay,
that's good stuff. We'll move on from Garnacho now. I've got quite a few big questions to ask you both. I want some discussion, some arguments maybe. No fighting allowed. But I'll pose you these questions and we'll see how we go. The first one, who is the better manager, Ange Postecoglou or Erik ten Hag? Ricky, I'll let you start.
Great question. You know what, I think it's still very, very early days of Ange. I mean, look, we had an unbelievable start to the season. One that I think many Spurs fans, we were trying to come to terms with what are we potentially in, whether it comes to title, top four, or the fact of just competing in the league. I think the one clear thing I would say with Ange so far for me is that you can see his philosophy very much imprinted at a very early stage at Spurs. I think when you weigh that up against Ten Hag from, again, hearing different Manchester United supporters, fans, is that they're still trying to work out what Ten Hag is trying to do in Manchester United, where I can only speak from a Spurs perspective. We've seen very, very early on what Postecoglou wants to do with Tottenham. He has transformed the brand of football. When you consider Spurs have had 3 to 4 defensive-minded managers in the last 3.5, 4 years to come in and quite succinctly ripped up the school of thought that you can change a mindset of not only a player but a squad in such a short amount of time is remarkable. My only sticking point is whether the brand of football is sustainable over the course of 38 games. But to answer your question, I think from what we've seen so far in a short amount of time from Ange is that he is most certainly on the eye got a clearer philosophy than Ten Hag has shown during his tenure at Manchester United.
Criticism?
I think the big thing with that, obviously, with Ange, obviously, the way that he's come into the league, the style of football they're playing is brilliant. I tune into every Spurs game. I think one of the best teams to watch in the world of football. The style, the way that they move their fullbacks inside, the eights moving into attacking areas, the width, the false nine with Heung-min Son, it's brilliant. But I think one of the big things that when you're looking at Erik ten Hag, obviously the structure around him has been very, very poor. From recruitment to the training ground to the standards at the football club. which has hurt him. I think if you switch the managers and Ten Hag goes into Tottenham, we would probably see more of his style, or that's what I'd hope to see. But I think if you look at Tottenham, Udogie, brilliant footballer, sign. You're looking at the likes of James Maddison, Mickey van de Ven, all these players that really suit how Ange wants to play. On the flip side, Manchester United, it's a catastrophe of signings over recent years. Casemiro for 60 million, brilliant for one season, wins a trophy, which Erik Ten Hag has obviously got on his resume at Manchester United, falls off a cliff this season. Everyone's dribbling past him. His statistics have dropped off huge in terms of tackles, interceptions, the amount of tackles that he's won. His ball playing's got worse. So there's a lot there to think about. And then you look at someone like a Raphael Varane versus a Mickey van de Ven. Two signings within a summer of each other. Yep. One, a young, talented player that's super fast, that's super good for the current style of football. One that's, his best years were like 5 years ago. So that's where I think you look at Ten Hag, and I don't think he's done a good enough job yet. For sure, like the control is not there. The control on matches, the dominating a possession, the creating chance, it's nowhere near the level of Ajax. And he keeps going back to that. Why don't you play the Ajax football? Or because we play different here, we play more transitional. Okay, but there were loads of really good principles at Ajax that we're not quite seeing at Man United now. And yes, we could be a transitional team, but then why is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer not the manager? Because he was very, very good in the big games. The performances against City, Liverpool, Chelsea, season after season under Solskjaer were very, very good. He struggled a little bit in games where we had to break teams down, but the performance was there in the big ones. So why not stick with that for more of a long-term thing? And I think that is the problem that eats Erik Ten Hag, is it's very short-term, whereas it should be a long-term project, which I think you can see with Spurs, and that's why Ange gets the benefit of that.
Yeah, I do agree. I think also what's very key is what we've kind of been elaborating here in these last few minutes is the fact that recruitment is so important, because I think what you've seen with Spurs in a short amount of time during the summer is that you can tell that all of these players that came in were very much vetted by Ange, and you can really have a feeling that, for him, he's identified every single profile about what these players are going to each bring to the football club. And there's no doubt that from doing that, you can then see the impact they've made in such a short space of time. I think, Dave, whether you look at United's transfer business over the last 12, 18 months, from the outside looking at United, it seems quite erratic to some degree. And I think with Spurs, there's been, I can't remember if I'm even saying this with Tottenham, because our recruitment policy in the last however many years has been questioned, but with Paratici working alongside, as you've seen, the likes of the new sporting director that's coming now, Johan Lange, I think Spurs have got a clear mindset in terms of what they want to do, what they want to be, and where Ange sees Spurs going, which I think, again, for fans is really, really exciting. We've all wanted to have this common goal where everybody feels together and connected. I feel as United, you're trying to get that to that point.
Yeah, but again, like, you think you outside of recruitment, Spurs' is squad in a sense. You've got two proper holding midfielders, Højbjerg and Bissouma. Obviously, both suit different styles. Højbjerg's fantastic, Mourinho, Conte, and then obviously Bissouma now is probably the best DM in the Premier League.
I agree.
In terms of his passing, in terms of winning the ball back. If you look at the possession-adjusted interception statistics, he's clear in the league by a mile.
Yep.
That obviously takes into consideration how much ball you have. So he's doing so well to win the ball back when Spurs have those small periods. But those players fit a number of different managers' styles. And then you look at United's holding midfield line, coming into Erik Ten Hag's tenure, Fred and McTominay in midfield. Both players, under Solskjaer had their games. The big games, they were very, very good. Breaking teams down, they weren't. But that was Manchester United defensive midfield line. And I suppose that is kind of the bigger thing, is like, where is United going? And how can any manager come in and change this without changing that as a policy, as an idea? And United have had to have players like Kobe Mainoo come through the academy and then be there. And then you look at United's academy; they've not been producing players. Kobe Mainoo is a talent that gets through any academy in world football, in my opinion. He's that type of player. I've spoke to people that worked with him when he was 13 at Fletcher Moss. Talent all the way through. Where's the rest of it? Whereas I feel like other teams around, Manchester City, Chelsea, two great academies that work around. Spurs have got a pretty decent academy, some players coming through right now. Villa, another brilliant academy. Where United aren't producing players in the academy, the squad's a mess. So it's very difficult for Erik Ten Hag. So as much as could be critical about the lack of control, the ingredients are pretty bad. He's like making a cake out of, I don't know, some steak or something. It's just not the wrong ingredients, and then the ingredients don't make sense, and then you go to the shop and you can't buy any good ingredients, or you buy some ingredients and they've gone off the next year. That's the type of problem United have got right now.
Is he just not very good at picking the ingredients, or is he's going back to the old shop he used to do, isn't he? Shop round the corner.
But that's like the other side of it as well. Like, you know, Mark Overmars did a great job as a director of football. Obviously, there's stuff outside that he has done very, very poorly, but he was very good at getting the players. You know, for United to spend as much money as they done on Anthony just shows a lack of like recruitment. Like, find a left-footed right attacker in European football that's got good expected numbers and got good dribble numbers. It's not a difficult thing to do. There was quite a lot of them on the market. Rafinha was a prime example. If United had gone to Barcelona with enough cash, they could have bought Rafinha, who is Premier League ready, Premier League proven. It is so intense off the ball. You know, he's played for Bielsa, knows that type of style of play. So why is it so ingrained for this one player? You know, someone has to turn around and say, no, actually, there's this option, there's that option that can facilitate the same role, do it at a higher level or do it at a better level and not cost, you know, record transfer fee.
I think what we can say about Ten Hag is that he obviously picked up that Carabao Cup last season, which is something that Spurs have been waiting a little bit of time for. Starting from this season, let's forget about last season's Carabao Cup. Who do we think is going to win a trophy next, Man United or Spurs, given your current positions?
I think it's an interesting one because obviously United this season, after 13 games, got one more point than they did last season.
Yep.
It's not a massive amount of improvement. They've also got a 0 goal difference. At this point, it was like -1. That's still not great. United obviously out the Carabao Cup this season, which is kind of the one that you'd look at in a sense.
Likewise for Tottenham. I think for Tottenham as well, the Carabao Cup, if any Spurs fans are going to a season trying to identify what's the most winnable competition, it would be the Carabao Cup. And to have gone out in the manner they did to Fulham, making 9 changes, I think that was the first time you could really have been critical of Ange up until this point, where obviously we've had the 3 losses in a row. Because I think as Spurs fans, and I talk about the die-hard Spurs fans that are more from an older generation, the cup competitions, we were brought up on the fact that they were really, really important to Spurs. And the fact of going out of a cup competition that is so winnable in a season where you don't have European football, and up until this point we had a squad that could compete, is really, really disappointing. The fact that we now have to wait for the FA Cup to come round, which, let's be honest about it, the FA Cup is coming into a point where Spurs are decimated by injuries. You look at the fact they've got 10 players out. You'd argue and say 6 of the players out would arguably be in and around the starting 11, and that's what makes it really hard. So I would love to sit here with my Tottenham hat on and say Spurs, they can most certainly beat United to a trophy this season, but realistically, when you look at United and what they are capable of on their day, I think United have shown that when it comes to cup finals, they can get over the line. They've done it already once with Ten Hag. That's why it'd be very hard to bet against United over Spurs on that point.
I think the big thing with that is that the individuals is a big part of it. Yeah. Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, on their day, can beat any side. It's getting them back to that point.
Absolutely.
But I think you mix in a goalkeeper that is a good goalkeeper in Andre Nana. You know, in the Premier League this season, now you look at the statistics: number 2 for saves, number 1 for save percentage, post-shot expected goals, second best in the Premier League, 5 clean sheets, which is the best of any goalkeeper. There's a keeper there, and I think the Carabao Cup last season was good for United, but they should have also won the Europa League, if we're really honest. Like, David De Gea just absolutely chucked it away, like really did chuck it. Very, very poor from him, and it's the reason why he's not here. And there's a lot of talk earlier in the season, why has David De Gea not been signed as a backup? Why is he not still... Because he was a really bad footballer, and that doesn't allow you to play out from the back, which hindered the style last season, which is another in the defence of Erik ten Hag. But at the same time, there's other things that we'd deal with there. Onana last season showed that he can be a real good goalkeeper when it comes to top competitions in the Champions League. He was the best keeper by a country mile. That combined with the individualistic style of some of the United players, you definitely say Manchester United are closer to a trophy than Spurs. But I don't think it'll be this season. FA Cup's a great option for Manchester United as it is for Spurs. Champions League, Manchester United are currently bottom of the group as the time of recording. If they get knocked into the Europa League, that's a good chance to win a trophy. Will they beat the Europe's elite? No.
I have to say, I think from a Tottenham perspective is whether we genuinely take the FA Cup seriously. I think again, you look at
surely European competition.
You know, I think there's
Christmas break over.
This narrative around Spurs is that the likes of Conte and Mourinho that were winners are winners in their own right of what they've won. I don't know whether there's that kind of pressure from the top that the top 4 is the be all end all at Spurs, and you know, to get to a cup final and a trophy is secondary. But there's a feeling, I think, amongst fans that ultimately there's been always this obsession about finishing in the top 4, right? And for me, look, whilst it's great playing in the Champions League, I think clubs are built on winning, and I've always said under when Maurizio was at Spurs that if you win that first trophy, what it does is give everyone the belief that you can go on and win more. And Spurs have not obviously had that feeling for a very, very long time. I won't put a marker on how long because I don't want to depress myself too much. But I think it would be great for this team under Ange that is fairly young. And the difference again with United, as Dave's picked up on there, they've got players that have won trophies. They've got the experience of getting over the line. I look at Spurs, it's a fairly young squad now. It's a new generation of style now that arguably these players are going to be learning on the job to some degree. Ange is a winner in his own right, of course, overseas. But I think the question is really whether the club, whether the players have got that mentality to do that. And I think the FA Cup is still very much a prestigious competition. When you look at teams that advance in the Cup in the latter stages, you've got to beat a Man City, you've got to beat a Liverpool, you've got to beat maybe an Arsenal or a Chelsea. So realistically, you're going to come up against one of those sides towards the latter stages and you've got to beat them. So have Spurs got that mentality? I think that's still questionable at the moment. We're in a very, very early stage of the season. We're obviously missing a number of key players. I would love to see Spurs take the FA Cup seriously, but I do concern myself with the fact that injury-wise at the moment, we're decimated. I don't use that as an excuse, but I think
it's tricky. Going to use it as an excuse.
It's tricky not to go back to that when you consider the fact that you look at someone like James Maddison, one of the most creative players, not in Tottenham's team, but in the general Premier League. Mickey van der Ven, for his interceptions, for his tackles, has been one of the best signings in the Premier League defensively. So then lose him, you're looking at the spine of the team, Romero being suspended. It's a difficult time right now, but I would love to see Spurs take the FA Cup seriously when it comes around.
I think we might have to get you a punishment every time you mention an injury at the moment for the rest of the podcast.
We've got enough at the moment, unfortunately.
For me, I see Man United and Spurs in this kind of second group in the Premier League where you're not going to win the Premier League title this season. That's probably going to be a Man City, a Liverpool, potentially an Arsenal. But this second group of teams, which I'll put Chelsea and Newcastle in there as well, I feel like you're all on very different journeys. But how do you see all of these clubs doing over the next 10 years? Who do you think will be the most successful out of Chelsea United, Newcastle and Spurs?
What about Aston Villa?
Yeah,
you'd have to throw them in. You'd have to throw them in.
Unai Emery, I think he's got like the third most amount of points when you consider when he first came in to now, which I think again is remarkable when you consider Villa have gone through, as Dave, I'm sure you're going to pick up on there, their own transformative effect where you consider the fact that they've really overturned a number of players, and also Unai Emery has got the best out of the players that he's worked with. I think Villa, as a Villa fan, I'd be so excited. They've made that home at Villa Park an absolute fortress.
I think if you're one of the top clubs now and you're not on it, there's so many of those clubs that are on it. Are ready to set Brighton as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it is sort of like the long-term plan for those, because you could argue that Villa have got it locked down right now. Monchi, Unai Emery, the Watkins flying, the team's really good. You look at Newcastle, same thing, where they're on it. They're good. They're very good at the moment. The squad is still a bit thin, I think, for Champions League and the Premier League.
It's going to be hard to balance those two.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because the first 11 is brilliant, very, very competitive, hard-working, but you start to lose those players. Losing someone like Sven Botman for such an amount of time is pretty big, and they've done so well to get around that. But you'd say Villa, Newcastle are probably like right now they're up there with their maximum they're going to reach. Chelsea, Manchester United are nowhere near where they could be. Spurs as well, as you mentioned, with Ange just coming in, starting to pull forward. But I think this group won't change. I think this group will stay competitive, because I think with Villa and how they're punching above their weight theoretically, same with Newcastle at the moment. They've not gone out and spent all the money that they could have spent. But United should get better and start being competitive. And I think that is the kind of problem that they've spent so long not being that they have to get back. They have to take a big jump.
Yeah.
There's so much they need to do and to improve. I think Chelsea are probably the best set for this in the long term. You think about their set, they bought so many. They're basically playing Football Manager, signing all the wonder kids, right? They've got so many good young players. That midfield of Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, it's two of probably the best defensive midfielders in the world.
Do you know Enzo Fernandez has only won 5 of his 30 Premier League games?
Which is absolutely insane for his quality. I remember.
So is he a complete waste of money?
No, absolutely not. I went to Chelsea last season, and United won that game. He was the best player on the pitch. He's such a good footballer, and I think with Chelsea, with Pochettino, and with what they've done already with recruitment and what they want to do, this is going to set them up really well in the future. So that's why I'd say they're in the best position. Young players, good manager to go to improve them. The next stage after Poch, obviously that'll probably happen at some point, has to be another manager that improves players. But the potential of that team is incredible. If they get Nicholas and Jackson, actually, to be fair to him, has been really good in recent weeks. Came into the Premier League, a lot of chances, missed a lot of chances, but he's been reasonably clinical in the last sort of 3-4 games. They probably do need a proper 9. If they bought a Victor Osimhen, then their team is seriously scary. They've got a great defensive line in there. Reece James should come in, into his own if he can get that fitness and form. They've got, a load of young centre halves in there, a load of French centre backs. The midfielders we mentioned already really good. The attack, they've got so much depth out wide now.
The thing is with Chelsea and potentially Spurs as well, I see Pochettino and Postecoglou as managers who could be there in 3 or 4 seasons. I'm not sure I see that with Ten Hag. And I'm not sure I see it with Unai Emery, even though he's really good.
All I would say is on the Pochettino point, having obviously the fact that he managed Spurs for a number of years, I think we can't go away from the fact that, especially when he was in control of us, and the fact that Spurs did punch above their weight consistently during that 3-4 year period. But it's impossible to get away from the fact now, and it's probably easy I can say this because he's no longer with us, that in those big games, I felt Maurizio really struggled tactically to get over the line. And it's easy of me saying that now, because again,
this season they've been the best in the bigger games. The 4-4 with City, the performance against Tottenham, obviously
Arsenal
it's
was
difficult
good,
to say, but Chelsea they won the game.
But I think the Arsenal
cards.
game is a prime example where under Maurizio, I saw that so many occasions with Spurs that you go 2-0 up, you've got to kill the game off, didn't kill the game off, and I think that's a prime example where Pochettino for me is really, really good with young players, but it is about transforming that mindset and mentality from being in control of a game at 2-0 to then shutting the game off.
But even I'd got to give him plaudits for being at 2-0. Because I think Chelsea of the last few years have been so poor that even having that aggression and having the mentality to come back against City. I understand that drop points against Arsenal.
You've got to see off though, Dave. I think
I do agree with that.
I think this is where for me Pochettino will be judged, because ultimately, and no disrespect to him, no one's going to take too seriously his achievements in France with Paris Saint-Germain. You expect to go there and win a championship. But the reality is that at a club like Chelsea have always been a club that are used to winning. They've been used to winning over a 20-year period. So when you're asking fans to adjust the mindset where you've got to buy into all these young players coming through, arguably playing in what their own way would be the Chelsea way, there will come a time where the pretty football will start to grey in on fans, because Chelsea are used to success. So how long are they willing to wait for a trophy? And that's the thing, again, being quite controversial here. I asked the same question about a club like Newcastle. Newcastle must have aspirations now with those owners to want to be arguably up there competing for a league. Now, I'm not discrediting the job that Eddie Howe's done. I think he's done an unbelievable job at Newcastle. But at what point does that football club think, okay, we've laid the foundations, when do we really go and make a big next step to really consciously push that squad on to see if we can compete? And I think that's going to be really, really key. And if that is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, you're talking about a league that could be competed by not one team, but 2, 3, 4. So I think it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years, depending on how these clubs look to move and operate.
I think Eddie Howe's still overachieving at Newcastle. I think while that's the case, he'll be okay. It's when they start spending millions and £1 million every transfer window, the pressure might go up, but expectations as well.
Can they do that? That's the question. Can they spend that level of money? Because it's FFP's come in now. You can't do what Manchester City did, or Chelsea did, should we say, that spent all that money. There is a back to it where Newcastle are staying within that. You also look at what they were trying to build. They're a very hard working side. They're aggressive off the ball. Eddie Howe's up there at being the way that he's developed since Bournemouth as well is massive credit. His Bournemouth team was quite different to this Newcastle team, and that's quite impressive. But you think about, okay, so if Eddie Howe were to go, who would come in? You think with that style, Diego Simeone's probably at the peak of that.
Yeah.
In terms of being aggressive off the ball, being super hard. Like Newcastle fans would love that. Someone like that. But then that's the next step for them.
It'll be a big name. It'll be a Zidane.
But I suppose I think that would be a mistake. And that would not be building in a lineal way. That would be, we're going to go and take this big manager. What can he do at the club? Obviously Joe Linton's a player that's been fantastic under Eddie Howe. Steve Bruce brought him in there. We've got to remember that. Steve Bruce made him a midfielder. Let's not mess about. But the growth is big, and they need to make sure that growth stays sustainable. And I think that would be the question.
Yeah.
There will be a point where they get a bit giddy.
Yeah,
and they do think, okay, we've got to go to the next level.
I mean, again, it's interesting. You've got to remember the fact they were linked strongly and wanted Unai Emery beforehand.
Yeah.
You can understand why now when you look at what he's doing at Aston Villa. I just think there will come that time at Newcastle where it's not the fans for me. I think the fans are really happy with the brand of football they're seeing. They love the manager for what he's done to that football club. But again, it does come down to how patient owners are. That when you're pumping millions, billions into a football club, how patient are you for success? We've sat here and said that for us, ultimately so far, Newcastle and Villa are performing to the level which they, for them at the moment, can only be doing based on the resources they've got. But at some point, owners are going to want to see that next level. I think it's going to be really interesting to see in these next few years how that pans out. For me, I look at Newcastle's owners. I don't think they're satisfied with just competing for top 4. I think they're going to want to go to that next level. How quickly are they going to want to do that? That is probably the million-dollar question at the moment.
So we can continue our talk about Premier League managers now. Let's keep your answers short and sweet for this one. Could you both give me your top 3 Premier League managers that you'd like to see succeed your current boss? Give you a minute to think about. We've obviously got names like De Zerbi, who's very popular. Rob Edwards.
That is a really, really... Rob Edwards is a really good coach, and I think he will go far.
Yeah.
I think with Luton is such a tough job in the Premier League. The resources is the spend always, wage spend always correlates with league position. He's so far at the bottom, it's ridiculous.
Ricky, Pochettino back?
Listen, I've learned to say football, never say never. I thought it was very interesting on the eve of the Chelsea game. Maurizio just seemed to think, I could one day come back and manage here. I think football works in mysterious ways. I don't think you can ever rule it out. I think that Ange has done an incredible start at Spurs. I know we're going for a sticky patch as we record at the moment, but I wouldn't say never to Pochettino. I mean, look, he's left that door open, I think, because he does feel some connection to the football club. It's a really good question because I'm not enamoured by the way De Zerbi does act on the touchline. I think that puts Spurs off.
I loved his celebration, at Forest.
I think that put Spurs off during the
pitch.
summer. I've got to be honest, I think that did put Spurs off during the summer. I know Spurs were heavily linked with De Zerbi. I know they liked him as a coach, but I just think the antics they've had, and the most polite way I can say this, in Conte, a very animated manager on the touchline. Do Spurs, Daniel Levy and that board want another firecracker?
So you're saying you wouldn't take Mikel Arteta at Spurs? Is that what you're saying?
I can quite specifically say I wouldn't take Mikel Arteta at Spurs.
Dave, you've got 3 names you want to put forward for the next...
Definitely De Zerbi, Arteta. And then obviously the issue with obviously both Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp is they've managed Manchester United's rivals. So for me, it would instantly rule those 2 guys out.
Do you think Emery, by the way, will get another big job? Because he seemed to have most of his success at Sevilla, obviously winning the Europa League so many times. Villa feel like a club in that mould. Obviously at Arsenal, he wasn't hugely popular. Do you think he'll get another crack at the big time?
Don't think he should. I think this is the perfect club for him. I think with the sporting director Monchi and him being there, same at Seville, that's the perfect thing for him. It would be silly for him to go, okay, let's say Chelsea, after they get rid of their manager, maybe 2 to 3 managers' time, like go and get Unai Emery. Like he's in the perfect spot. Like he's in a really good club, good academy that's got aspirations of being back in Europe, and they are obviously back in Europe, but like seriously back in Europe. So with Emery, I wouldn't take him Manchester United. I don't think the fit's right. It is this kind of counter-attacking at certain times, but also the possession football's been really good there as well. But it's just the wrong fit. Whereas De Zerbi, where it's like full focused on ball control, the way that they play through the lines, the chances that suits Manchester United. Arteta style suits Manchester United, and that's the idea where they should go. It's that total control. So as much as looking at someone like an Emery and the way that they've improved and amazing, don't get me wrong, very very good. Where he's moved Diaby into into the forward position, it's great. It's really nice to see. But does he have enough to be at a Manchester United or an Arsenal or Chelsea? Probably not. But this is a really good club for him.
Yeah.
It's a really good Premier League club.
The thing I would say on Emery, I mentioned it earlier, the fact that the guy is to date, when you look at since he came into Villa to now, they've collected the 3rd most amount of points in the Premier League. It's really hard to say he doesn't deserve an opportunity of a high level to Villa if he carries on in this trajectory. And if he gets Villa into the top 4, when you consider where Steven Gerrard left Villa, it's honestly mind-blowing the job he's done there. So
He's
I
made
think
Gerrard look quite bad, hasn't he?
well, he has. Yeah, I mean,
I think Gerrard did that to himself, and then he obviously took another job, and he looks even worse.
But
at
I think
the
with
moment.
Emery is that it's half me. I think I said this before. Had he not managed Arsenal, I think he would definitely be on my shortlist as a manager. I'd be keeping an eye on. Look, football again works in mysterious ways. I wouldn't ever rule out the possibility of potentially becoming a future Spurs manager, because ultimately the way it left Arsenal didn't go too well. So there's no doubt the guy's got ability. And again, the same for Maurizio. Again, I'm not saying I want Maurizio back, but I could envisage a time in which he could come back to Tottenham. And I think when you look at the other managers, I think Klopp is wedded to Liverpool the same way Guardiola is to some degree. And I think Spurs, when you look at the other managers out there, are like Eddie Howe. I'm not sure, in the most polite way I say this, I'm not sure what Eddie Howe can do to push Spurs any higher than what they want to be. I don't see Eddie Howe being a title-winning manager. I might be wrong. I think what he's done with Newcastle is absolutely remarkable, as I've said, but I think he's getting the most out of those resources that he works with, and I think he's not a manager, in my opinion, that loves to be dealing with egotistical players. He's very carefully brought in certain profiles that fit his way of playing football, and that's why I think, again, similar says
he's very England for me.
Yeah,
in a few years.
I think that's
England
more kind of
manager.
where you can see a steer towards that kind of role.
Definitely. I'm afraid, Dave, a Man City and a Liverpool fan on the podcast last week.
That's okay.
And I asked them this question, so I'm interested to get your view on it, and yours as well, Ricky. Are Manchester United still the biggest club in England?
Yes. They've won more Premier League titles than any other team.
Yeah, they are still the biggest club.
Very different answers to the two I got last week, I'll tell you. I heard crumbling roof, I heard awful training ground, terrible stadium, manager changes every 2 years, poor squad.
I think the big thing with City and Liverpool is they've been very fortunate over the last few years. The clubs have been run very, very well. And that's what happens to big clubs at certain times. Liverpool had that problem. In the 90s, in the 2000s, they just didn't win anything serious on a consistent level. Obviously, you take away Steven Gerrard's performance in Istanbul, it's a pretty barren run for Liverpool. Similar to Manchester City, they're only here because of the money that's been put in, let's be honest. The clubs, though, the way that they've built the clubs is a very modern way. United are so far away from that, but that's a really easy solution. And, go back to that Ralph Rangnick quote, it's open heart surgery to change it, but you could change it really quickly. And you could. Because there's loads of really easy wins Manchester United could do to get back. And I think at times, the two fans from last week obviously respect their opinions. They're probably just having a bit of fun. And the genuine nature is as soon as the new owners come in, United will improve drastically from behind the scenes. And because they've been basically playing with a blindfold on for, from that perspective, probably 10 years. It's been a long time since we've been, running the right way from a recruitment perspective. That changes things. Old Trafford is another thing. To let a great stadium like that fall apart is pathetic. But that will change. So there's lots of things there that are like easy wins. And as much as they can say what they want, right as of right now, in a year's time, it could be very, very different in a positive way for Manchester United. So again, people can say what they want to say, and eventually things will start to come back to the how it should be.
I agree with you. I think Man United are the biggest club in England and probably top 3 in the world. Talking of Man City and Liverpool, though, maybe Arsenal as well. Who do we think wins the title this year?
I think Man City will win it. I think, although Arsenal are top as we recalled, City, for me, don't really ever get going until early January, February.
They're doing this without De Bruyne.
Yeah, and I think, again, when you look at the squad they've assembled, and no doubt, potentially in January, they might dip back into the market. It's no guarantee, but I think City have shown you over the course of the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years under Guardiola, they're quite comfortable being in this position. I think it's the difference between Arsenal and City and other respective clubs. City are fairly comfortable to be a team that are chasing it rather than being out in front. I think they can handle either situation. It's about mentality. They've got winners in the squad. They've got someone like Guardiola that has been there, done it, won it on numerous occasions. And I think, again, when I look at the quality of the league, I look at teams that ultimately can get the job done. City, more than most, can do that. And they always come into their own in the second part of the season.
I think that City will win the league. Look at the teams that have won the treble in European football. 9 out of the 10 teams the next season have won the league. So there's precedent for that. But Liverpool are a lot closer than we think. I think Liverpool are very, very close to Manchester City. And I think their performance at the Etihad dictated that to a point. You know, the massive mismatch that we all saw, you know, Doku versus Trent Alexander-Arnold was an issue in the first half. He beat him 4 times. Trent had won 2 tackles on Doku. So, you know, in a 6 duels, massively in an advantage. But the way that Liverpool changed their shape, Trent was more inside. It was actually Joel Matip that was dealing with him a lot more in that second half. Tactically, very, very good. Trent inside is, you know, world class, in my opinion. You know, he has to move into central midfield. I think he should do it sooner rather than later. In the summer, they probably should have bought a right back and pushed Trent actually into central midfield. That's what I would have done. You know, they're still a little light in that zone, but they're a lot closer. You think Darwin Nunez is nowhere near where he could be. Like, you think about who's working with Bielsa, he's working with Jurgen Klopp. He's only going to get better. He's so raw at the moment. He needs coaching, and that's going to happen. But then on the top, you're seeing Salah's having one of his best ever seasons from a goal scorer and assisting perspective, more goal involvements in games he's played. You've also got, you know, that midfield area as well. Dominic Szoboszlai is speaking a lot about him in terms of his work rate, his ability to help Trent, but also attack. Liverpool are a lot closer. I think there's question marks on Arsenal in terms of what they actually are this season.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think they're creating as many chances.
The system has changed as well. I think you have to acknowledge the fact that Arsenal have changed their system away from what they were last season. And again, I'll say this, I don't really care, I'm not an Arsenal fan, but they're nowhere near as attractive to watch as what they was last season. And ultimately, I know they're still where they are in the league, and as we record, they're currently top. But I just feel with Arsenal, the situation around the goalkeeper hasn't really helped anyone in that squad. I mean, again, I understand you want the best players competing for each position, but I think Arteta's giving himself more of a headache. And I just feel with Arteta at times that his willingness to try and be clever in terms of making decisions and trying, I think, show he's learned so much of Guardiola can ultimately be his downfall. I think Arsenal have really, really, no doubt, improved in the last year or two where, look, they were, eighth, and they've gone unbelievably to show how far they can go under Arteta. But it's very hard to look upon City that have been there, done it on numerous occasions. And with Liverpool, I think Liverpool are building towards something. You know, I just think this season, although I acknowledge that Liverpool will be right up there, I just don't see them in a position where they will be competing with City for the title.
It's been a very quick rebuild for Liverpool. Let's not forget the midfield from last season to this season changed so quickly. So the fact they're competing is fairly impressive. Let's widen it out to the top 4 as well. We've mentioned Liverpool and Arsenal. Do we both think they'll be in the top 4?
Yeah, I think they're 3 of the they're the best 3 teams in the league by a mile.
And who's 4th?
I think that's probably the hardest thing to say. At the moment, probably Aston Villa right now are the 4th best team in the league.
On the form guide, you'd have to say, in the way they're playing and the way the manager's got them playing, it's very hard to look beyond Villa at this moment, but we all know football can change.
I think the big thing is the Thursday nights. That is something that it's very, very difficult to be consistent second half of the season when you're playing, you know, a lot of games in the Europa Conference League. That could be an issue.
And they go deep in Europe, Dave. I think
they
Emery is, with Emery, he takes the European competition so seriously that Villa will be there towards the latter stages of the season. How are they, as you say, going to handle the fact of Thursday, Sunday, you know, on quite a numerous amount of occasions where the big games start coming towards the end of the season? You've got to be on it on those 12:30s on a Sunday, or those 12:30s on a Saturday. It's going to be tough, but I think Villa are well placed as we record at the moment.
I think also we're talking about top 4, but it might as well be a top 5 as well with the Champions League places next season. Do we both think Tottenham and Man United will be playing Champions League football next year?
I think that with what Tottenham have done so far, they could definitely be there. The issues is that they've lost the players you mentioned. You know, Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero are so important to their structure and their system. You know, Spurs build up with 2 players. There's so much space in the channels to deal with. You know, Mickey van der Ven being one of the fastest centre-halves in Europe has been massive for them, but Christian Romero has also been very good. If you look at the numbers in terms of tacklers, dribbles, so when you're facing a dribbler, both of those players, you know, hit around an 80% success rate, which is the best of any pairing in the Premier League as centre-halves. But then you look at the possession statistics as well. Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero have got the best pass completion of any pairing as well. Something like 1,414 passes out of 1,516 passes completed at a 93.2% completion rate. That is elite level. You've also got Van der Ven being left-footed, opens up so much. Yeah. The issue for Spurs is when those guys are, like those 2, like either of them gone, the drop-off is huge. Yeah. So that's the problem for an entire season of Premier. Christian Romero loves a challenge as well. Gets himself in bad situations at times. That's something that he actually needs to improve. That would be a problem. And then you combine that with James Maddison. he's got injury problems. He always has had injury problems. He had such a great run at the start of the season. Now he's out. That would be the question marks for Spurs Champions League. Those two defenders and, of course, the 10. I'd also throw in that if Vicario gets injured. He has been so good. Yeah. There's an issue there. Whereas United are sixth for some reason. They're playing so poorly. Their level is so much ahead of where they could be right now. So if they tick into playing the football that we all perceive them to be able to play under Erik ten Hag, they should be Champions League easily. You then throw Chelsea into the mix as well. I think they have also got maybe another few levels under Poch. They are super inconsistent, though, with their performances. So I think Manchester United will be there just because of what will come. And you're looking at Rasmus Højlund having amount of football in the Premier League. You're also looking at the development of Ameno, Garnacho. Rashford hasn't scored any goals yet. Like, that has got to come at some point. That will come, and I think it's out of Spurs and Chelsea for that final spot.
The other thing I would say, I think with United, is it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of European competitions, what they do end up going into, because
they'll be playing European football. They'll be fourth in the Champions League. They'll be out. It'll be like Spurs, FA Cup, Premier League.
I look at United, I think, again, like the impact of Europe over the course of the latter stages of the season, I think will have an impact. With Spurs not having Europe, and fingers crossed, they get Maddison back and Van de Ven back for the business end of the season. Spurs have got a chance, but I just think different between Spurs and United. I think Spurs are so heavily reliant on 11, 12 players, where I look at United, and I'm sure David Matthew, you tell me they do need investment 100% in the squad. I feel United have got more options to count on 13, 14 players, where Spurs, I feel, without the set 11, as you mentioned there, you take out a Romero, a Van de Ven, everything completely changes in terms of the philosophy, the mindset. I feel like Spurs can, in a way, really struggle to play the Ange way they want to play. And that, I feel, is my biggest concern with Spurs, that a couple of injuries, as we've seen already, it takes a lot out of the team.
But United are currently where they are with a lot of injuries. Like Lisandro Martinez, by a country mile last season, was probably one of our best players.
Absolutely.
The way that he carried, like this season, he was quite poor. Obviously, the injury that's reoccurred was probably still there. Like, that's levels. When we talk about ball playing centre halves, like how important Van de Ven and Romero is, Lisandro is that important for Manchester United. When he comes back, and but we can talk about that, and we can talk about the consistencies and inconsistencies of the squad. There's issues in training. There's obviously a muscle problem. There's so many muscle injuries that has to change, or something that the coaching staff, the analytics team goes, oh, wait a minute, what are we doing in training? Why do we keep getting the same muscle injuries? Why do hamstrings keep going? The quad muscles. So there's a change there as well, with the new owners coming in, with Ineos coming in and going, hold on a minute. What's going on with this?
Yeah.
And that, if that gets fixed, that puts United in a very, very good spot. And like you said, the squad is deep, but there's a load of injuries. So if you change that and you've got the deep squad and the quality, then that will improve, and that should see Manchester United into that position.
I think the difference maybe is it's easy to say now Spurs have lost 3 games in a row, but you can see Spurs going on a fairly barren run over December. We called it no points November, didn't we?
Yeah.
Man United, for all their troubles, have been picking up points fairly regularly.
And
I don't see them losing.
That gap has now reduced significantly between Spurs and United, and arguably Spurs have got difficult games coming up. City, of course, Newcastle on the horizon, West Ham. I don't think that's an easy game in London Derby. And I think December is always a tricky month in football. Again, you consider Christmas and what comes with that, and the fact that the games are coming thick and fast, and you have the FA Cup come in. Suddenly you get to January and February and you're in the business end already. So I think January's window is pivotal to Tottenham in terms of what are they going to do to address, for me, key areas in which need to be strengthened. I think, as I said at the time, coming out of the window in January, it was criminal Spurs did not sign another central defender. I know that's hard when you've got Romero and Van de Ven, you're asking someone to come in and essentially play second fiddle. But when you're a team that have got aspirations of Champions League, you need to have someone there of a level where you've got reassurance and essentially confidence that someone can come in and do a job. Spurs don't have that in Eric Dyer, and Emerson Royale is currently playing as a makeshift centre-back. So January for me is key for Tottenham. I'm sure Dave for United.
Again, like how the issue for Tottenham, I suppose, is that position is so pivotal in your system, but it's also really pivotal in European football.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of teams looking for centre-backs.
Of course.
And I suppose, spending the money on Mickey Van de Ven is unbelievable business. Spurs are going to have to do that again, but also do that with a player that is equally as good on the ball, equally as fast, but also will accept to be on the bench. So you've got, your margins are going down. It needs to be a young player that can get minutes in the cup, maybe.
Yep.
And then it's going to cost you a lot of money because it's always expensive in Jan. And then with Manchester United, obviously, January, there's so many areas that they could instantly improve. Todibo from Nice could be an instant solution to that problem. It feels like they're better suited for January. Spurs are, quite reliant, as you're saying, on...
Absolutely reliant.
They really need a play. But we never know that after this part of the season that Mickey van der Ven and Romero might be all right to the rest of the year, then you're okay. The depth needs to be there for Spurs. It just doesn't feel like you'll be able to solve that in January. It feels like like you said, it should have been done in the summer.
Absolutely.
It should have been another player.
One thing you can add into that is that Spurs and for European football is a great thing for the Premier League, you'd think, but you're out the Carabao Cup.
Yep.
So if you're offering a centre-back, someone to come in
not
and
many
be
games.
third choice,
Yeah.
well, you're going to play FA Cup third round. Well, if you lose that, you're pretty much done. I'll move on and talk about the next thing, which is if you could pick one player to take from the other team, so Tottenham, Man United, Tottenham, and place in your starting 11, which one would you pick and why?
That is really tough.
Good question.
I don't mind Onana, but I love Vicario. So
Yeah,
I think you're both kind of happy with the keepers.
Vicario's top, but Onana's shown that he's also at a very, very high level, and I'd say he's better on the ball than Vicario.
Van der Ven, maybe.
Van der Ven would probably be the one. Maybe moving Lisandro to left back and having him play as a third centre half in possession or into midfield. I think that could be a good situation. Obviously, with Martinez, he does so much really well, but there is always going to be that point that he's quite a short centre half. So maybe moving him to left back, signing Mickey van der Ven would be the number one. I'd love to get James Maddison, but it's just the injuries. When he's in flow, he's fantastic for Spurs, as you mentioned. Most chances created, most progressive passes, most passes into the penalty area, most goal creating actions. The list goes on and on and on. But you couldn't trust him to be a 10. Versus Bruno Fernandes that just doesn't get injured. Touch wood. You've got a different, level of fitness. So 100% Mickey van der Ven would be the one. And that's the embarrassing side for Manchester United. It was available in the summer for 35 million.
Yeah, it was a snip. I mean, the one player that came to mind when you said that question for me was Rasmus Højlund. I know we've seen.
That would have been my pick.
I know we've seen.
That's a good
I know we've not
actually.
seen a huge amount of him, but I think for Spurs that. Look, I think I've been getting away from this for a long time now since his departure in the summer. The question was asked, are Spurs going to be missing Harry Kane? I think we have to be realistic and say, over the last 3 games, Spurs have missed a finisher. They've missed Harry Kane. They've missed when they could put the ball in the back of the net. I think, I'm recording on the back of Heung-min Son scoring a hat-trick of offside goals, only, like I say, against Aston Villa. I think Spurs, for me, still will have to address that forward area. And Rasmus Højlund, for me, I look at him, he's young, he looks so energetic, so enthusiastic. He's everything you want in a young player that is prepared to take the league by storm. And I think, many question the price tag United paid for him. Some did, or many did, but I think you can see United have got a player there that I think has got no fear about him. And I think, again, looking at reflection, I think, it's a player that I'd love to see in a Spurs shirt.
The difference between him and Martial is so vast.
It's massive. It's massive in terms of where he could go as well. I think the fee is the thing that gets me. I think the fee is a bit too high. I think there's other players that they could have bought for a similar fee in European football that may have instantly come in and done something. Long-term project, absolutely. But United should have bought 2 strikers in the last summer. They should have got 2 forwards, an old forward and a young forward. They just bought a young forward for a really expensive fee, and then they turn around and go, okay, why are we playing Anthony Martial still? Don't get me wrong, played reasonably well after Man United were up against Everton. But that's always been Martial, so inconsistent, so off sometimes. If on his day, he can be fantastic, but that's not a forward that you need to be relied on. I think with Højlund as well, with Postecoglou and the improvement that'd be there, you've seen Heung-min Son be that perfect player off the feet sometimes. Højlund needs to develop that part of his game. When he's got the ball to his feet, he's really, really good on the dribble. He's so dangerous, but he doesn't get the ball enough in those situations. Very good on the quick turn, flicks through and, combination play with attackers near him. We just don't see that enough at United yet. That's something that he needs to improve on. With Ange, that would be improved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Look, I think as an option, Spurs are going to need to look at that forward area. I know they've been heavily linked with Jota in January, but again, when you're looking at areas that Spurs need to improve, we've touched upon the centre-back, how hard that might be. Forward area, again with James Maddison, as Dave's picked up on the fact there, he's a player that can be quite injury prone, so it's an area Spurs will need to potentially look at in January. And I know that sounds really, really dramatic, me putting everything on January, but it feels like a club like Spurs, with what they're trying to do, relies heavily on such a number of players staying fit. That's why January's market is so important to act early. I think when you look at Spurs' previous business in January, Pedro Porro on the last day of the transfer window in January, you go back the following year before that, Bentancur, Kulusevski on the last day of January. Spurs have to act fast and be ready.
3 good signings, though, to be fair.
3 good signings,
really
but
good signings.
I think you have to ask the fact that, can Spurs
do it earlier?
They can't be position where you have to wait until the end of January. They've got to act early if they're going to try and maintain any real push for a top 4 finish. Because I fear you wait until the end of January, Spurs might be even out of the race for a top 4. It might be top 6. That's how much this Premier League is so unforgiving.
So Ange Postecoglou recently described Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as a nightclub. Dave, by comparison, how would you describe Old Trafford? Is it someone's front room at 5 a.m?
No, I don't. It's a nightclub that used to be good. It's like the Hacienda. It's been turned into flats. It's got a different purpose these days. Again, the atmosphere at United's improved with the TRA in recent years, and that's something that should be opened up. At the moment, that's apparently getting reduced. That's a really important thing. Fan culture is big in football, and that's something that needs to be protected. So I'd say it's the Hacienda that's been closed down, that's in disrepair, that's no longer a nightclub that everyone loves.
Needs a bit of a rebuild, and it'll be back better than ever.
Hopefully.
I've got a would you rather question for both of you. We'll move on to that. Ricky, would you rather Arsenal won the Premier League and Spurs won the FA Cup this season, or you both had trophyless seasons but finished in the top 4?
How toxic are you?
Guys, I can't sit here and say on camera I want Arsenal or could conceive Arsenal to win a Premier League as much as I want Spurs to win the FA Cup.
Really? Isn't it all about trophies though? That day at Wembley you could have.
I just know from Arsenal fans we will never, ever, ever, ever hear the end of it. I mean, as a fan base, they are one of the most irritating, arrogant bunch of fans. I am craving Spurs to win a trophy. I think that's very, very clear as I record here, but not at the detriment of Arsenal winning the Premier League. But I am desperate for trophies.
Well done for not swearing during that as well.
Try my best.
Dave, would you rather Jim Ratcliffe took full ownership of Man United and the Glazers left, or Man United won the Premier League this season?
Definitely Ratcliffe taking full control. Yeah,
that's long-term plan, right?
Yeah, long-term plan. As much as the Premier League this season would be incredible. United actually blocked City winning the quadruple last season, so they've already got that trophy, so it's time for change, future. That was it.
That is it. I thought Nathan Jones stopped City winning the treble last season.
No, we stopped City winning. Who won the EFL Cup? Manchester United, right?
Who knocked City out?
It doesn't. We lifted the trophy, so we blocked them technically.
Okay.
If we look at the history sheet, it'll be like City, Manchester United.
That is a very good point. Right, we'll move on to. I've got a start one, bench one, sell one question for you both as well. Dave, I'll start with you this time. 3 academy products: start one, bench one, sell one. Marcus Rashford, Kobe Mainoo,
Oh my God,
Alejandro Garnacho. After that goal this weekend. Rashford's not been great recently, has he? He obviously scored a penalty, but he's been a bit off it.
Fair to say. I think that's very fair.
He wasn't great for England either during the international break. I'm not sure he's... Southgate seems to have liked him a bit more recently. I'll just give him Dave time.
This is very, very tough because you all 3 players are part of Manchester United's history and academy, and that's important. It's important to keep these players around, and they're the heartbeat of the club. So you wouldn't sell any of them. In realistic terms, it's difficult to say which one you'd start out of the 3 because if Rashford gets back to the form of last season, he scored 30 goals. It only happened at Manchester United, 8 times in the history of the club? More than the 30 goals. He had a great season. He's not in form right now. He's playing within himself. Then you've got Alejandro Garnacho that has incredible levels of talent. And then Kobe Mainoo. I think Kobe Mainoo is probably the most important player out of the 3 at the moment. It just is in central midfield. United needs someone that's technically sound, got a good first touch, that can escape pressure, that checks his shoulders, that can play progressive passes, that can carry through the middle. So Mainoo would be the number 1 guy right now to start. But that's very, very difficult. I think Marcus Rashford may need a bit of time outside the spotlight. So maybe put him on the bench, which means we're selling Alejandro Garnacho that's just scored a bicycle kick, maybe putting his value at the highest right now in European football. So that will be the thing. Sell Garnacho to make some money, but We can't clip this up without the context. I think is very, very important.
So Statman Dave wants Man United to sell Garnacho now.
You see, that's not going out as a clip.
You could just do a sales pitch and show that goal over and over.
Yeah,
again,
that's what I mean. Like PSG, you go to Paris and you go, we've got this lad, Argentinian. Mbappe's going to go Real Madrid. We've got a guy that just scored a bicycle kick. Watch this. You show him the clip. You check out with 300 million. You can then rebuild Old Trafford, build the academy up, sorted.
Suddenly it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that's it.
Ricky, one for you. New signings for Spurs: Mickey van der Ven, Pedro Porro, or Destiny Undogi.
Oh,
because I like them all, and as we've already mentioned, three very, very good signings.
Yeah, I mean you've named 3 players there that are all really progressive at the moment as well. That are all becoming real fans' favourites. So I feel like
I didn't want to make it easy for you.
No, with either option, I'm really like I'm screwed by that. I would say, okay, I would say sell Pedro Porro because I think whilst he is tremendous from an attacking perspective, I think defensively he could be better. I think he's improving massively under Ange. Can I just say, give a bit of context to that? Mickey van der Ven start. I think it's very hard to look beyond just how important he's been. And I think, look, you've seen how important he's been. Look where Spurs have been without him, right? I mean, we've had those defeats to 3 in a row. I firmly believe, even without Romero, had Mickey started those games with an Eric Dyer or even a makeshift Emerson Royale, I think Spurs, with 10 on the pitch against Chelsea, may have beaten Chelsea. I think they get at least a point against Wolves. I think they get at least a point against Villa. I think he's that important, Van der Ven, when you think about the pace, as Dave touched upon earlier, how important that is the way Spurs want to play, how Ange wants to play. Being without him just completely, utterly takes away the narrative and the meaning of what Ange ball is. And then Destiny Udogie, I would probably bench him anyway for the stupid sending off against Chelsea as almost like a naughty boy to say, you got to learn your lesson.
It's been unbelievable for you this year, but one sending off and he's got to go on the bench. Absolutely brutal.
I wouldn't sell Destiny Udogie. I think that guy is already taken the league by storm in that position at left back. A position at Spurs, I've got to say, I'd have to go all the way back to Danny Rose in his absolute prime at Spurs, which many would say was only for a short period, in terms of when Spurs had, for me, the best 2 fullbacks in the league in terms of Danny Rose and Kyle Walker. And we've not been able to replicate that yet. Although I'm selling Pedro Porro, I think there's work to be done on him in this context. But all 3 players, I think, are just part of what is the really exciting revolution under Ange Postecoglou.
Love that. And we can discuss a few more of your players now. I think the last thing we want to do, imagine we're at Power League, it's 5-a-side, and you've got all of the Man United and Spurs players, they're all fit, lined up. So we've got 1 keeper, 4 outfield players. Who is getting into our Power League 5-a-side combined 5?
Well, Andre Onana is a 5-a-side player, right? He could play fly goalkeeper, he could play midfield, could play in defence, but an incredible shot stopper as well. So I think Andre's got to go in the team.
Oh, I don't know, Dave.
Ahead of Vicario. Vicario's not going to be able to play in the middle. Look, if the players get tired, you need to rotate. Vicario's not got it, whereas Andre Onana could probably play in midfield with Edison in the Premier League.
Can I add though, Dave? I mean, look, literally, if you saw, the Chelsea game, he was playing sweeper keeper Vicario. He was halfway up the pitch on a number of occasions. I think, based on what we've seen so far, and I know Onana's come on to do really well recently with the 5 clean sheets and the shot stopping saves that we've seen. I think Vicario has been unbelievable when you consider new league, new language, new manager, new style of football. I don't think I can let you have this one, Dave.
But it's like with what Pep Guardiola says about John Stones. It's taken him a while to play this like libero role. He has to have that 360 knowledge in the centre of the pitch. It wasn't right from at the start of his City career. Andre Onana could do that. He has that 360 vision, whereas I think Vicario's not quite there yet. You've got to give him a few more seasons in the Premier League, and then he can open himself up and play Power League.
It's a very good argument.
Yeah.
It's a very good argument. I don't want my keeper outfield in 5-a-side. That's all I'm going to say. So on that note, I'm going to go Vicario just because I love him as well. So we'll go Vicario in goal. Let's go for 1 defender, I think. Let's be a bit attacking.
Yeah,
I think we have talked about...
I think Mickey van der Ven would be very, very good. Like, too fast, too strong, technician, left foot, everything that you need in a defender. So yeah, he's got to be there.
Easy.
Yeah, no argument on that one. That was easy.
Yeah, a couple of midfielders or three attacking, thinking players.
I think Basuma would be very good five-a-side just because he's got that little shift in him. But man of the moment, Kobe Mainoo would be underrated. He'd be that lad that you go to five-a-side and you go, that guy's not really got anything. Then you realise he's strong, he's physical, he knows how to play, and then he can carry. So yeah, I'd say that Mainoo would be a little bit of that, sprinkle in a little bit of unknown. Whereas your Basuma turns up, you know what he's going to do. I've been in the Premier League for years. You're like, yeah, I know, we'll have to mark him. He's a real key part of their team. Whereas you think Mainoo, they just brought one of their mates in. One of their brother's mates has just turned up for a bit of five-a-side. Catches you out, you see.
I think it'd be very hard. I'd let Dave have that one, but I think I would maybe swap and exchange Basuma for Maddison. Oof. I feel like, how can you not have a five-a-side with Maddison's creativity in it? All I would say with Basuma, he has had a tremendous start to the season. However, for me, there's been a slight drop-off since the sending off against Luton, where we haven't seen Basuma rediscover that start of the season that we saw. I agree with Dave on the point that when you look at what DMs are going for now, I mean, we come off the back of a summer where Caicedo went for, 115 million. Basuma, I don't know what Conte was doing to him in training. I mean, look, from what I heard behind the scenes, there was a lot of repetitive training, and that is the way Conte loves to coach his players. But I think we've seen with Basuma at the beginning stage of the season, just let the guy play, take the shackles off, allow him to play. I think he's only going to improve in a Spurs shirt. But from the premise of five-a-side, I can't have a five-a-side without James Maddison in it, based on the fact we're talking about, as Dave said earlier, one of the most creative players in the league, most progressive passes, most creative chances. Maddison's got to be in that for me.
And then Bruno Fernandes, when you look at his statistics, Housery, 100% in terms of winding the opposition up, making fun of them, getting in their head. James Maddison's not quite got that. And I think our team is at the moment a little bit quiet, a little bit weak. You know, Mickey's just going to be cleaning up at the back. He's not going to be talking. We've got young Kobe in midfield. Obviously, you know, Vicario might be giving it a bit of some sort of chat, but we need someone middle of the park to wind up the opposition, get in their heads, and make them think about him versus the rest of the team. So I think having someone like Bruno Fernandes, of course, he'll give you the work rate, the energy. Pressing, obviously, five-a-side, there's not really going to be that. It's more tracking your man, is it doing your running? And that's what Bruno Fernandes does do. Up, down, left, right. You know, wind you up a little bit, score a goal, and you saw it. It'd be the player that you'll remember after the end of the tournament being like, oh, remember that Bruno? Yeah, he was dead annoying. What a player.
I think if we have Kobe Mainoo in, which I think I'm for, just because of the little brother thing. That we don't know much about.
Sneaky.
We've not seen him much in the Premier League, but five-a-side, maybe we just chuck him in. I think if we have him, I think him and Bruno might have to come as a pair, just because Bruno's got the arm around.
He is the little brother.
Exactly. So unless you can argue against it, Ricky, that's what's happening in this team.
It's hard. I think based on the fact that with James, we've seen obviously him suffer the recent injuries, you could argue that maybe he wouldn't be
match fit
physically enough to handle the brutal situation of a five-a-side. So we'll let maybe Bruno have this one.
I can't imagine anything worse than conceding in five-a-side to him. Imagine his little smug face.
Honestly.
Right, we've got a forward position left. It can be a winger, it can be a striker. We need someone who's going to bang in the goals and who's a bit of a shithouse as well, I think.
I think it does come down between Heung-min Son and Marcus Rashford. I think they're the two obvious ones that would be very good for five-a-side. Both of them have got the ability to beat you in the dribble, step over, a shift, or a flip-flap. So at the moment, I'm thinking Heung-min Son, just because of how he can finish off both feet. Very, very difficult in five-a-side to deal with someone that can go both ways. As much as Rashford in form, you definitely play him. But if we're picking a team for tomorrow, you probably go with Heung-min Son. And there's no offsides in five-a-side.
Yeah, I mean, on that basis alone, get Sonny in there, there's no offsides. I think Son is one of those players that we've seen over the course of the last however many seasons that he's got a really good season in terms of he's won the Golden Boot, and then we have Son where unfortunately there's a dip. Whether, as long as we get the consistent Heung-min Son, I've got no problem putting him in there. I think this season has been pleasantly surprising when you consider with Sonny that when he came to Spurs, he was more of a wide forward and just now transitioned him to go back down the middle. And I think, on his days we've seen Sonny is capable enough to get goals. So I think the advantage with Sonny is he plays more than one position. Good for five-a-side, right?
I'm going to throw another name in though.
Yeah?
I was going to say Rasmus Højlund could be the perfect five-a-side player. Again, slightly unknown. Like you go to five-a-side, there's this big Danish lad, Blondé. Like, come on, he can't be that good. Strong, quick, exceptional on the dribble. Finishing wise, very left-sided, so he's not got that duality of Heung-min Son, but he can give you a lot of other things. You know, a little bit of an unknown, got that little burst of pace that I think is a little bit got over Heung-min Son. So I think he's definitely got a shout. He's got that.
I was fearing you were going to bring him up to begin with, because I think it would have been hard for me to make a case against him when I said earlier in the show he would be the player that I would be taking from Man United. I think, again, with Sonny, I love Son, and this is not to do him down. I just feel we are yet to see a huge amount of consistency over multiple seasons with Sonny as a forward. Again, I have to be conscious and say that we're asking Son to play a position where he has played it for South Korea as well, but ultimately I feel Son is more suited to more of a wide forward rather than straight down the middle. He's doing a job right now. I think that may change in January depending on what Spurs do in the market. But I know the South Korean Spurs fans watching this will be absolutely hating on me if I do not pick Heung-min Son.
I think the two-footedness is huge in the five-a-side, so that's why I'm maybe leaning towards Son. Although I do think this team might be a little bit nice.
No, but then you forget that
We've got
Heung-min Son has
We've got
got
Bruno in there.
Heung-min Son's got a vicious side
He's got a
to
bit of
him.
streak in him.
Yeah, he's got a red card in him.
All right, let's put Son in there. We'll put Son up front. So our team at the moment is Vicario. We've got Van de Ven at the back. We've got a midfield of Bruno Fernandes and Kobe Mino. Big brother, little brother duo.
We haven't got much power in there, have we? Like, or aggression. Which might be
a Højbjerg.
Yeah, someone just to put some challenges
guys,
in.
As much as I want to,
let's get a Sar in there. As much as I want to pick
a Spurs player, I think Højbjerg for me is just kind of. I think his time has kind of come to a natural end at Spurs in terms of what they want to be. I think he's made, as you said earlier, for a Conte, Mourinho kind of side. I feel like where Spurs are trying to evolve under Ange, I'm not sure if that's in the same connectivity as where Højbjerg links to Spurs anymore. Maybe for a father side, it's a good option.
Have we got any last minute changes we want to make? Any last names? Any more physicality? Because
Scott McTominay's in form at the moment. He just scores goals. He'd probably just score goals in five side if he'd be that type of player. Just bang goals in. I think he'd be a really good sub, actually. Bring him on, ruffle some feathers.
Okay, we'll have him
do
on the
some
bench.
aggression.
I could argue a case of Basuma based on the way he started the season alongside Bruno. Which would mean I've got to take out his little brother.
Can't take his little brother out. Sorry, he's already paid his fee on the train. It's already coming down.
Right, the team is staying as it is. Then the brothers are staying in, and we'll have a bench of McTominay and Basuma. The only thing left to decide is who's going to manage them on the sideline. Do we want a bit of Ten Hag, or do we want Ange playing everyone on the
I think
halfway?
Ange would be very inspirational in the five side. We've seen some of the stuff
all
with
about
Australia,
the team talks, right? All about the team talks.
Yeah, I think that'd be quite good in a short game. Go and express yourself.
Absolutely.
I worry about him forgetting there's no offsides, that playing everyone, on the halfway line. Just kind of.
He could be all right.
That's what makes it more exciting.
Yeah, change it out.
Okay, right. I'll run through this team one last time. We've got Vicario, we've got Van de Ven, we've got Kobe Mino, Bruno Fernandes, Heung-min Son up front, and Ange Postecoglou in charge. That means we've got, I think, 4 Spurs and 2 Man United.
Scott McTominay on the bench as well for impact.
Is that a half point?
Yeah, half point.
So that is our Power League 5-a-side team. I think we can be pretty happy with what we've put together. Thank you very much both for joining me, Ricky.
Pleasure.
Rashford at Spurs and Statman Dave. Thank you very much for coming. That's it for this episode of the Sportsman Untitled. We will catch you next time.